So you come to a project, okay, and this is really question 1 on the midterm. You come to a project, you're going to build a project, you're going to build some web application. I'll use the example of a check-in application for a charity where they need to track the number of people that come into the charity. They need to collect some data from them. The first thing that you should be thinking about for some sort of an application like this is, what is the data that I'm going to store? What do I have to collect? And this is really data modeling. And the thing that you want to do is you want to build an ERD. An entity relationship diagram. And you want to spend some time working on the entity relationship diagram to make certain you've really captured what the data is. The reason that you start out with this piece is if you build this piece first, okay, it will make the rest of your software development project much easier. Things will go better. You will have fewer problems. Now, chances are that you go and build one of these, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have mistakes. So don't think that magically, because this is the model you built, you're done. But this is where you start. From the ERD, you build tables. From the tables, you build an API, an application programming interface. Then you build a web app. Okay, this is the usual order. And there's some amount that you circulate back and forth between these two things. Okay, then you find out there's something in the API that isn't right, and you go back to this and you make some changes here, and you float those changes back into your model. So that 6 months from now, when you come back to this project and you have to update it, you've got accurate documentation that reflects the model. Now, when we start out with the ERD, we're going to model the data, then we're going to build tables, then we're going to build the stuff on top of it. But you start out with a foundation that works, then you build the building. So you build a table, okay, and I'm going to say that this table is client. Okay, and what do we want to track about client? Now let's say that the clients have cards that they scanned, QR code cards. So a client comes in, and there's 2 cases. Either the client is new and we register and print out a card for them, or they've never been into this charity before and they scan their card to show that they're coming into the charity. So there's some fields that we want to have about this client. And usually there are 3 things that we want to track. One of them is this a primary key? And we want to have an ID that is something like a UUID, a universal ID. We want to have their name, which is text. In a real application, I might split it up, first name, last name, some things like that. I may want to have other information about them, like I may want to be able to search by their last name in uppercase, or a SoundX search. We're going to get to those things in the course of the class, but you build out the list of columns. You may need their address. Okay, usually address is not just one field. You break it up in like 4 lines, but we'll just say for this example that it's text. Okay, and then for every time they come in and visit, you may want to have a second table out here that is, okay, a visit log. And you say, what's the relationship between the visit log and the client? Well, you get multiple visits, so you must have this kind of a relationship. Now, you may want some other things in this table. You may want date, and whatever type you want for a date. Let's say that it's a timestamp. And I didn't leave enough room there to write timestamp, I guarantee to you. So you've got a client table that's got some columns in it. These are the names of your columns. This is the data type of your columns. Here's a primary key index. Okay? You may want to have over here some sort of index on the name. That seems likely. Okay? So you've got a column in our little diagram that says, these are the things that I need to index. You've got a foreign key relationship. After the 2 tables are built, you add in the foreign key relationship. Over here, you probably have an ID, which is a primary key. That's an ID for this table over here. And it's a UUID as well. And then you have, okay, a client ID. that's a UUID. And I'm going to erase this and make it like you would see in an actual diagram, where we're going to collect our little foreign key right to the column that says it's client ID. So we know that the primary key over here connects to the client ID over here. So this is a foreign key. And we have when they actually visited. And again, I didn't leave enough room to write timestamp. I'll just put time S period. How's that? So these are the things, and when you get this information, you get this diagram, you build the diagram usually, but you get a diagram. Sometimes you go in and, some other data modelers come along and they've built the diagram and you're looking at all these tables. What does this diagram mean? I mean, here's a table, here's a relationship. I ought to be able to, in a nice tool for this, actually draw the diagram and automatically generate the SQL. But a lot of times, okay, you've got a diagram that somebody does, and they don't have a fancy tool, and they're not going to spend lots of money on the tool, so you get to build the tables by hand. But the process of building the tables by hand is question 1 in the midterm. I will give you a different diagram with about 4 tables in it, a few relationships. You turn it into some SQL, test it. You may want to insert some data into it by hand. I'm not asking for the data to be turned in. I'm just going to look at the tables and see till you build the tables and the relationships. You know what the column names are, the data types, where the keys are. Put all of that into your model, and that is question 1.